our music theory series, and I know that I look exactly the same, everything looks exactly the same, but as I said before, this is just me in one stream of consciousness getting this out to you in one thought so that I kind of feel like I don't forget anything. So in this video we're going to be talking more about chords and scale degrees, and maybe like how you might start writing a song if you're interested in a song, or just when you're playing a piece to know what are the important notes of the piece, what are their functions, so that you kind of have a little bit more understanding of the music while you're playing. So what I've done is taken the key of A. So I've written out all of the notes in the key of A. Now in the key of A you have 3 sharps, right? 1, 2, 3, Father Charlie goes, take the last sharp, find the note above it, it's A. So we have A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, and then we're back to A again. And then underneath here I've written the scale degrees. That little symbol here means scale degree. And we have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then back to 1 scale degrees. That's different from a Roman numeral. A Roman numeral signifies a chord, and a chord is made out of thirds. So, I mean, you can have more than that, but just as the most basic thing, you've got your chords here, right? So, let me start with telling you how to find and figure out what are the most important notes of the piece that you're playing. So let's say we're playing something in Suzuki Book 1. I chose the key of A because that's kind of what you're going to find for the first few songs in the Suzuki Book 1. So of course A is going to be an important note to make sure that you're in tune all the time when you play an A, because it's the root of the chord. It's the very first note of the chord, it's the first note of the scale, it's the first note of the key. So make sure that you've got your A in tune. And then the next important note is, I mean, they're all important, but these are just kind of notes that are going to stand out so that you kind of know why and why they might be important. So the next note that is important is C sharp, because if you look at this chord, if you look at an A major chord, you actually have a C sharp in it. A, C sharp, E, and the third here between A and C sharp, between the root and the third, this determines the quality of the chord. So it's going to determine whether it's major or minor sounding. So if you're going along and you're playing your C sharp in the key of A and it's a little bit flat, it's going to sound kind of out of tune, but it might kind of make it sound kind of minorish and sad, because it's the third of the scale and it's the third of an A major chord. And chances are, if you're playing a C sharp, it's probably it might be part of this one chord. Okay, so a C sharp, you want to make sure it's nice and sharp, not too sharp, in tune, but not flat. Okay, and although that's a little bit different if you're talking about tuning a chord, that's totally different. I'm just talking to you on a very basic level. So because when you're tuning a chord, actually you want the third to be slightly flat. And it's the reverse if you're doing a minor chord, and you want it to be you want the third to be slightly higher. So it's just kind of makes everything sound a little bit more in tune. Bach is a nightmare to play, but it's also amazing to play. But it's just anyway. But just so that you know, you need to make sure that when you're playing your song that your third is nice and in tune, nice and high. Okay. All right. Next note that we have of importance is the fifth, and the fifth is important also because it's part of the one chord, A, C sharp, E, and it forms a perfect fifth against A. So if your fifth is out of tune, if it's a little bit flat or it's a little bit sharp, it's going to sound really wonky. If it's flat, you're going to sound kind of tritone-ish, and if you're a little bit high, you're going to sound kind of minor six-ish. and it's just going to sound a bit weird. It's going to throw off the harmony of the chord. So these are your important notes. And then the seventh function is to bring the ear back to the one. So if you're seventh, a lot of times things will kind of end da-dum, because it just sounds like a conclusion. Da-dum, you recognize that interval? Da-dum, da-dum, da-dum. It's Jaws, it's a half step. So make sure that your half step, this seventh here, is really tight. So what I always tell my students is make sure that your half steps are tight and make sure that your do, re, mi's are really in tune, because if you do that, then all of this is going to be so much better. But if at least you make your half steps really tight, then you're getting your third and your fourth, C sharp, D, and your G sharp and A in tune, and you're kind of getting a few birds with one stone in that case. So okay, now going down to here, I'm giving you kind of the most popular chords to make a song out of. So you can make a song out of these 3 chords. You can make a song out of 1 and 5. So you'll see actually that the 5 chord contains a G sharp in it, which is that leading tone, the 7th. So the 5 brings us back, brings the ear back to 1 for that reason. So it just kind of creates tension and release for the ear. So and then the 4 chord is like a passing tone to that. So it's also a beautiful, important chord in that too. It can add some beauty in there. So anyway, these are the most important chords I would say to start with, and they're based out of the scale degrees. So the 1 begins on the 1 scale degree, and then you build your thirds on top of it. You can really easily see thirds because they're made out of space notes. If you start on a space note, you just stack space notes on top. If you're starting on a line note, you just stack line notes on top. You know, here's another space note, stack space notes on top. A chord is played at the same time, but you can also make an arpeggio out of these. An arpeggio is something that you should also be practicing. When I give my students something to work on, I usually give them a scale, thirds, and arpeggios to play, so that you can kind of get around you can get your ear really listening into the key, whatever key you're in, which is awesome. So okay, what else can we talk about with this? When you're writing a song or when you're working on improvising, what you can do is you can if you record yourself playing, if it's just one note, why don't you just pick the bass note of each of these chords and just put your metronome on and then record yourself playing an A, for example, for like 8 beats. That would be kind of 2 measures, the 4 beats in a measure, or you can do it for longer, 4 measures, 4 beats in a measure. So just hold an A for 16 beats, or you can hold open A and open E because you have your open strings here. You can just hold that for a period of time, and then you can switch over to the 5 chord or the 4 chord, and then play either the root or the root in the 3rd or the root in the 5th, whatever is kind of easier for you to play, and play that for 16 beats, and then go back to the 1 chord and play that for another 16 beats, just so that you have a nice long time to practice over. But what you're going to do is you're going to take the notes out of this chord, so A, C sharp, E, and you can vary kind of the rhythm of them. You can do interesting things like tremolo, or you could work on sliding, or you could just, I don't know, work on different rhythms really with just a single note. If you think about the songs, a lot of times the song will just have a bunch of words on one note. Da, 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 I'm going to the store, and I'm going to the store has its rhythm, but they're all different words. Da, 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 da. You see what I mean? So you could practice that rhythm, improvising just with one note, and then you could do 2 notes or 3 notes and just kind of change it around a little bit, if that makes any sense. And then once you kind of know where these notes are, then you can include some kind of passing note. So a passing note would just be, so for example, from A to C sharp, you got a B in between. So if you use B as a passing note to C sharp, it might sound really beautiful. Or you could come down from D to C sharp, and that might sound really beautiful. Or you can just do a scale A, B, C sharp, D, E, and just kind of use that kind of riff a little bit. But I wonder if I'm forgetting anything. This is just kind of a really brief intro to all these things. But if you look at the waltz books, that's why I love the waltz books so much. Let me just grab one of those and we'll take a look at it. Because the waltz books have the chords written out so that you can kind of see. Let's see. Actually, I'm going to grab my Christmas carols book because that has two things in addition to the melody. So let's just take something that might be kind of a familiar one for you guys. Oh, and I've actually written out the notes in the chord for Away in a Manger. You can see this is the melody here, right? We have one sharp, it's in the key of G, and it ends on a G, and it actually ends F sharp G, right? Because F sharp is the seventh. It's the note behind G, it's the seventh, and it kind of adds that finality to the piece, conclusion, right? So it's going to start with the G chord, and the notes of the G chord are G, B, D. So this is the melody. Let's take a look at the harmony. So the harmony is actually made out of those notes. B, we have a passing note to G. You see that? So the harmony is actually made out of the notes of the chord, just different rhythm or same rhythm. Actually, it's the same rhythm in this case. It's just taking these notes. We're starting on the third in this case, and we have a passing note down to the root, which is really pretty. And then on top of that, someone can just play open G and open D just to have that beautiful kind of drone in the background. Or if you play guitar, you can kind of do your own little strumming thing in the background. But I hope that kind of makes sense and sheds a little bit of light on kind of chords and what you can do with them. It might be helpful to go through, like, I don't know, the circle of fifths and all of the chords and all of the keys, all of the keys. And we can talk about minor keys, but that's a little bit more advanced, I think, because as a beginner, and my videos are geared more towards beginners because there's so many of you out there that want to learn. So I guess I can do some videos on that too. But anyway, this is just our basic intro to all these things. I hope that was helpful, you guys. Thank you so much, and I'll see you soon.